No one wanted Mama's Christmas food, the little girl said, until a cowboy whispered, "Home. Tomorrow we're going to sell all of these." Cora's hands flew across the table, straightening cookies with fierce concentration. Flour dusted her dark braids and the tip of her nose. "Then we'll have a splendid Christmas, won't we, Mama?" Ruby pressed her cracked fingers into the dough, shaped another star. "We'll do our best, sweetheart. And we'll buy red ribbon for my hair, and peppermint sticks, and—" The door opened without a knock. Mrs. Brenner stood in the frame, her thin mouth already set in that familiar line. She didn't step inside, just surveyed the borrowed tins and hoarded flour with counting eyes. "Mrs. Ruby." Not a greeting. The summons. Ruby's hands stilled. Beside her, Cora went quiet. "The Wilson family needs this room after Christmas. For days." Mrs. Brenner's voice carried no emotion. "If you can't pay rent by then, you'll need to make other arrangements." Ruby's throat tightened. "I'll have it. Tomorrow's market?" "You've said that before." The words hung sharp and final. "4 days, Mrs. Ruby." "I'm sorry, but rules are rules." She left. The door clicked shut. "Mama?" Cora's whisper came small and scared. "Are we going to have to leave?" Ruby knelt, cupped her daughter's flour-dusted face. "No. We're going to sell everything tomorrow. Every cookie, every pie. We'll have enough. I promise." Cora nodded, but her eyes held doubt too heavy for 5 years old. Ruby turned back to the dough, kneading harder now, trying to shape hope from nothing. The Christmas market woke before dawn. Stalls rose in the town square, vendors arranging goods with desperate hands. The air smelled of cinnamon and wood smoke and fear disguised as festivity. Ruby set out cookies while Cora arranged pies with solemn concentration. Around them, other vendors called prices, smiled at customers who stopped to look. At Ruby's stall, people passed without slowing. "Fresh Christmas cookies." Cora's voice rang bright. "Mama's pies. Best in the territory." A woman in a green coat paused, eyes catching on the golden cookies. Interest flickered. Then her gaze traveled to Ruby. The interest died. She moved on. Cora tried again. "Sir, would you like to try?" "No, thank you." "But they're fresh." The man's eyes found Ruby, traveled the length of her, returned to another stall. "I've made my purchases." He hadn't purchased anything. Ruby watched him buy jam he clearly didn't want. An hour passed. The market thrummed with commerce that never touched their corner. Cora kept trying, her voice growing hoarse. 2 women stopped across from them. Their voices carried like they meant to be heard. "Is that the charity house woman?" "Yes." "Mrs. Brenner is finally putting her out." The pause. Eyes on Ruby like hands pressing bruises. "Oh. You can see she hasn't been going without." The cruelty lived in what they didn't say. The pause, the weight on certain words, the way their eyes lingered before looking away. "I wouldn't trust it." When someone struggles to manage things properly. They moved on. One glanced back, mouth pursed in judgment. Cora's hand found Ruby's. "Mama, why won't anyone try? Your food is the best." Ruby's throat closed. "Because they see me and decide they know everything. Some people judge without tasting, sweetheart. Keep trying." Across the square, Wade Brennan loaded supplies into his wagon. Movement caught his eye, a small girl working the crowd with heartbreaking determination. He watched her try a couple. They refused. She tried again. And again. Something in her persistence pulled at him. Then she spotted him. "Sir." She was at his elbow, looking up with hope and heartbreak balanced. "Would you like to try the finest Christmas pie in the territory?" Wade crouched to her level, smiling. "You're quite the saleswoman." "Mama taught me. A good merchant knows her product." Her professional mask held despite the desperation underneath. "And Mama's pies are the best." "Is that so?" The mask cracked. "Yes, sir. But no one wanted Mama's Christmas food today. They won't even try. They just look at her and walk away." Her eyes were too bright. But I know it's good. Will you taste it? Please? Wade looked past her to the woman at the full table. The widow from the charity house. The one people avoided with elaborate care. He'd seen that look before. In mirrors. Show me. Cora's face lit. She grabbed his hand, pulled him across the square, chattering about ingredients. At the stall, Ruby looked up with eyes that expected nothing. Mama, this gentleman wants to try your pie. Ruby's hands shook as she cut a piece. It's apple. With cinnamon. I hope you like it. Wade took it. Their fingers brushed, hers ice cold. He bit into the pie and the world went quiet. It tasted like his mother's kitchen. Like Christmas before his wife left. Like every warm memory he'd buried. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, Ruby was staring like he'd performed a miracle. It tastes like home, he said quietly. Cora exploded. I knew it. I told everyone but nobody listened. Wade smiled at her, then looked at Ruby. Do you have more? I need to feed 20 ranch hands. This is everything we have. Then I'll take it all. He counted out far more than it was worth. And if you can make more, I'd like to order for tomorrow. Enough for 20 men. Cora grabbed his sleeve. She can. We'll have it ready, won't we, Mama? Ruby nodded, tears falling. I'll come by to collect. Where are you staying? The charity house. End of Oak Street. Tomorrow morning, then. He left. Cora's excited voice filled the air. Ruby stared at the coins. Enough for rent, enough for Christmas, enough to breathe. But tomorrow morning, 20 men's worth of food. And their cupboard was already bare. Cora talked the entire walk home, her small legs working double time to keep up, her voice painting pictures of tomorrow's baking and the ranch and the kind rancher who'd smiled at her. Ruby let her talk. It was easier than speaking, easier than thinking about what came next. The charity house room felt smaller after the open market, the walls pressing close. Cora was already at the table, arranging imaginary ingredients. We'll need flour for the bread, and sugar for the cookies, and, Mama, where do we keep the apples? Ruby moved to the cupboard. Her hands didn't shake as she opened it. Empty shelves stared back. A tin of flour, maybe enough for 2 loaves. A cup of sugar at most. 3 withered apples. No butter. No cinnamon. No eggs. Mama. Ruby's vision blurred. She gripped the cupboard door. Mama, where's the food? We used it. Her voice came from somewhere far away. We used it all for today's market. Silence. Then Cora's small hand on her arm. But we promised. The rancher is coming tomorrow. We have to. I know. Ruby sank onto the bed. I know what we promised. Cora climbed up beside her, and they sat there in the cold room with the impossible order hanging between them like a debt they couldn't pay. Finally, Cora spoke. It's okay, Mama. We'll figure something out. We always do. Ruby pulled her daughter close and cried as quietly as she could. Morning came too fast. Ruby hadn't slept, just lay in the dark counting hours and running calculations that never added up to enough. The knock, when it came, felt like judgment. Cora scrambled to answer, and Ruby heard her daughter's voice take on that too bright tone children use when they're trying to be brave. Mr. Wade. Good morning. We're working on your order. Mama's just finishing up the... Cora. Ruby appeared in the doorway, and her daughter's voice faltered. Wade stood there with his hat in his hands, and Ruby saw him take in the room, the bare cupboard standing open, the empty table, the absence of anything resembling 20 meals worth of food. I'm sorry, Ruby said. The words tasted like ash. I don't have your order. We don't have the supplies. I can't fill it. Cora jumped in, her voice quick and desperate. We just need a little more time. Just one more day and Mama can. You don't have supplies. Wade's voice was gentle, not accusing, just stating a fact they all knew. Ruby's throat closed. She shook her head. Wade looked at Cora, then back at Ruby. I have a proposition. Ruby went very still. I need a cook at my ranch. Have for months, but can't find anyone reliable. You clearly know what you're doing, and I've got supplies, a kitchen, everything you'd need. He paused. Come stay there. Cook for my ranch hands. I'll pay fair wages, and you'll have access to whatever ingredients you need. Cora's gasp was audible. Mama, that's perfect. We can. I can't. Ruby's voice came out harder than she meant. I'm here on charity. There are rules about. It's not charity. It's work. Wade met her eyes. I need a cook. You need work and supplies. Seems fair to me. People will talk. They'll say I'm. Let them talk. I have a daughter. I can't put her in a position where. Mama. Cora grabbed her hand. It's a job. A real job. We should take it. Ruby looked down at her daughter's face, so full of hope it hurt. Looked at the empty cupboard. At Wade, still standing there with patient eyes. At the four walls of the charity house room that would stop being theirs in 3 days. 1 week, she heard herself say. I'll need permission from Mrs. Brenner for 1 week away. Wade nodded. Fair enough. Mrs. Brenner's permission came with conditions and warnings and a lecture about propriety that Ruby endured with her eyes down and her jaw tight. In the end, she got her week. 1 week, Mrs. Ruby. Then you return, or we'll assume you've made other arrangements and give your space to someone who needs it. Ruby packed their few belongings while Cora bounced around the room like a sparrow. The charity house had never felt like home, but leaving it felt like stepping off a cliff. Wade arrived with his wagon at sunset. He loaded their bags without comment, then helped Cora up onto the seat. When he offered his hand to Ruby, she hesitated only a moment before taking it. The ranch road stretched ahead in the failing light, and Ruby held her daughter close and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. The guest cabin sat apart from the main house, small but solid, with real glass in the windows and a stove that actually held heat. Cora explored every corner while Wade brought in their bags, and Ruby stood in the middle of the single room trying to remember the last time she'd had a door she could close. Kitchen's in the main house, Wade said. I'll show you in the morning. For tonight, there's firewood by the door and water from the pump out back. Anything else you need, just ask. Ruby nodded, words stuck somewhere in her chest. He left them alone. Cora was asleep within minutes, exhausted from excitement. Ruby sat by the stove and watched the fire and wondered what she'd agreed to. Morning came with frost on the windows and the smell of coffee drifting from the main house. The kitchen, when Wade showed her, was bigger than the entire charity house room. Shelves lined with supplies, a long table for prep work, a stove that looked like it could feed an army. Ranch hands eat at 6, Wade said. Breakfast and dinner both. Lunch they take with them. Whatever you make is fine. They're not particular. Ruby ran her hand along the flour sack, felt the weight of abundance for the first time in a year. Thank you, she whispered. Wade nodded and left her to it. The days fell into rhythm. Ruby cooked, bread and stew and roasts and pies, the kind of meals she'd dreamed about making when they'd been eating nothing but thin soup and yesterday's bread. Cora helped, standing on a stool to stir pots and knead dough, chattering constantly about everything and nothing. The ranch hands loved her. These hard men who worked cattle and mended fence and rarely smiled found themselves grinning at the little girl who asked 1,000 questions and remembered all their names and told elaborate stories while she set the table. Your daughter's something special, one of them told Ruby after dinner. Ruby watched Cora laughing with the men and felt her heart crack open just a little. Wade taught Cora to ride on the gentlest horse, leading her around the corral while she shrieked with delight. Ruby watched from the kitchen window, hands in dishwater, and told herself it meant nothing. One afternoon, Cora went quiet mid-ride. Wade noticed. What's wrong? Papa used to talk about getting me a pony. Her voice was small. Before he died. He said when I was bigger, he'd teach me to ride. Wade slowed the horse. How long ago did your papa pass? Last year. It was winter. He got sick and then... She trailed off. If Papa was alive, we wouldn't have to live in the charity house. Mama wouldn't be sad all the time. People wouldn't say mean things. Wade lifted her down from the horse, crouched to her level. Your papa would be proud of how brave you are. How you help your mama. Do you think he'd like that we're here? I think he'd be glad you're safe. Cora hugged him suddenly, fiercely, and Wade froze for just a moment before his arms came up around her. Ruby was rolling dough when she noticed the torn shirt Wade had left on the chair. She mended it without thinking, the way she'd mended her husband's clothes, the way her hands knew to do. Wade found her later. You didn't have to do that. I know. I wanted to. He looked at her, really looked, and Ruby felt something shift. My wife left 2 years ago, he said quietly. Said ranch life wasn't what she'd signed up for. Went back east. Then my mother died 6 months later and He paused. I've been alone since. Built this whole place thinking work would fill it up, but it just made the empty louder. Ruby's hands stilled on the dough. Until you two got here, Wade continued. Suddenly there's life in it again. Laughter. The smell of real food cooking. I forgot what that felt like. We've been alone too, Ruby heard herself say. Since Thomas died. Every day is heavy. Like carrying something I can't put down. I thought I was doing it for Cora, staying strong, but she sees through me. She always has. You don't have to carry it alone. Their eyes met across the kitchen table. I'm afraid, Ruby whispered. Of what? That this ends. That we go back. That Cora gets hurt when we have to leave. Wade stepped closer. What if you didn't have to leave? Before Ruby could answer, Cora burst in with a ranch hand in tow, and the moment shattered. But it lingered in the air between them, a question neither quite dared to answer. The week passed. Then Wade asked if they'd stay another. Ruby requested permission. Mrs. Brenner granted 2 weeks, no more. Ruby told herself 2 weeks was enough time to save money, make plans, figure out what came next. She didn't let herself think about what she'd do when the time ran out. Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow and a silence that felt like grace. Cora woke to find a small wooden horse waiting by the stove, carved by Wade's own hand, its mane detailed with careful knife strokes. Ruby's breath caught when he presented her with a bolt of deep blue fabric. For a new dress, he said quietly, when you're ready. She cooked a feast that day that filled the ranch house with smells she'd almost forgotten how to create. Roasted turkey, apple pie, bread so fresh it steamed when cut. The ranch hands ate until they couldn't move, and afterwards one of them played fiddle while Cora danced in circles until she collapsed laughing into Wade's arms. Ruby watched from the kitchen doorway, and for the first time in a year, the weight she'd been carrying felt lighter. Wade caught her eye across the room, and something unspoken passed between them, not just gratitude, but the beginning of something neither quite dared to name. That night, after Cora fell asleep clutching her wooden horse, Ruby stood at the cabin window and let herself imagine, just for a moment, that this could last. 2 weeks became 3. Ruby meant to leave. She'd packed their bags twice, rehearsed the goodbye speech, braced herself for Cora's tears. But every morning Wade would ask if she'd stay just one more day, and every evening she'd find herself agreeing. The ranch hands needed feeding. The work wasn't done. Just one more day. She stopped packing the bags. Mrs. Brenner arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, her buggy rattling into the ranch yard like an omen. Ruby saw her from the kitchen window and felt her stomach drop. Mrs. Ruby. The woman didn't dismount, just sat there in her buggy like a judge on a bench. You were granted 2 weeks. You've been here 3. I know. I'm sorry, I meant to send word. This is highly improper. Mrs. Brenner's voice could have frosted glass. You're living here. Unmarried. With a child. Working for a single man. Do you understand how that looks? Cora appeared in the doorway. Mama has a job. She cooks. It's not. Hush, child. Mrs. Brenner's eyes never left Ruby. I'm afraid you'll need to return to town immediately. The room's been given to another family, but there are arrangements we can make. She's not going anywhere. Wade's voice cut across the yard. He strode from the barn, his face set in lines Ruby had never seen before. Mrs. Brenner straightened. Mr. Brennan, I'm sure you understand. I understand you're on my property telling my cook she can't work. Your cook? The words dripped skepticism. Mr. Brennan, the appearance of impropriety is your problem, not mine. 2 more buggies crested the hill. Ruby's heart sank. She recognized the sheriff's wife in the first one, and the reverend's wife in the second. This wasn't a visit. It was a delegation. They descended like a flock of crows, all dark skirts and sharp voices. Mr. Brennan, we're concerned. Living situation is scandalous. Think of the child. Poor man doesn't see he's being taken advantage of. Wade held up a hand. Silence fell. Ruby works here because I need a cook and she's the best I've found. What she does with her time, where she sleeps, who she talks to, that's her business and mine. Not yours. But the propriety, the sheriff's wife began. There's nothing improper about honest work and fair wages. People are talking, Mr. Brennan. Let them. Ruby stepped forward, Cora pressed against her side. It's all right, Wade. They're right. We should go back to town. No. Cora's voice was fierce. Mama, we're happy here. We can't. Cora, hush. Wade looked at Ruby, and she saw something crack in his expression. You want to leave? I don't want to, I have to. For Cora, I can't. She swallowed hard. I can't let people think I won't have my daughter's reputation. Your reputation was already damaged, Mrs. Brenner said coldly. Living on charity, no husband, no prospects. That's enough. Wade's voice went dangerously quiet. We're only trying to help. You're trying to control. There's a difference. He turned to Ruby. Don't let them bully you into going. It's not bullying. It's... Ruby looked at the women, at their pinched faces and satisfied eyes. They'd been waiting for this. Waiting for her to fail, to prove she was exactly what they'd always thought. It's the way things are. She took Cora's hand. We'll pack. Mama, no. Now, Cora. The charity house room had gone to another family, so Mrs. Brenner found them space in the church basement, a cot and a blanket and a single lamp. Cora cried herself to sleep that first night, and Ruby lay awake listening to her daughter's hitching breaths and hating herself. The women were there the next morning when she went for water. Watching. Whispering. Told you she wouldn't last. Using the child to manipulate that poor man. Some people have no shame. Ruby kept her head down and her daughter close and tried to remember how to breathe. At the ranch, Wade stood in his empty kitchen and realized he didn't remember how to do this. How to live in the silence. How to eat cold meals and sleep in a house that echoed. The ranch hands noticed. Started bringing their own food, working in careful quiet. You should go get them, one of them finally said. She made her choice. Did she? Or did those harpies make it for her? Wade stared out the window at the empty guest cabin. She deserves better than this, he said quietly. Better than me, better than a scandal, better than... She deserves to choose for herself. Wade was out the door before the words finished landing. 4 days in the church basement felt like 4 years. The cot was narrow, its metal frame biting into Ruby's hips no matter how she turned. Damp seeped through the stone walls and settled into her bones, a chill that never quite left. At night, the air smelled of mildew and old candles, and Ruby lay awake listening to the shuffle of feet overhead, the church continuing on as if nothing below it mattered. Cora stopped talking on the second day. She curled inward on the cot, knees tucked tight to her chest, thumb hovering near her mouth like she was 5 again instead of 8. She spoke only to ask when they could go home, soft questions, careful ones, except there was no home left to return to. Ruby answered anyway, smoothing her hair, lying gently, because a child deserved answers even if they weren't true. Ruby found work wherever she could. Mending torn sleeves. washing other people's clothes until her hands cracked and bled, scrubbing floors for women who wouldn't meet her eyes. The jobs no one else wanted, paid just enough to keep food in Cora's stomach. Mrs. Brenner made it clear the church's charity had limits. "This is temporary," she said, tight-lipped. "We can't have people growing comfortable." As if hunger ever became comfortable. The women watched. Always watching. They watched Ruby count coins at the market, watched Cora sit too quietly on the church steps, watched them like cautionary tales. What happened when you overstepped, when you forgot your place, when you thought kindness might last? Ruby carried their stares like stones in her pockets. On the fourth morning, Ruby was hauling water from the pump when she heard it, hoofbeats, sharp and fast, cutting through the low hum of town like a blade. She looked up. Her heart stopped. Wade. His horse came in hard, flanks dark with sweat, breath steaming. Wade dismounted before the animal had fully stilled, boots hitting dirt with purpose. He didn't slow. Didn't look at anyone else. He walked straight toward her. The bucket slipped from Ruby's fingers and water splashed onto the ground, soaking her skirt. She didn't notice. "Where's Cora?" Wade asked. His voice wasn't angry. It was worse, steady, decided. "Inside," Ruby said. "Wade, what? Get her. Now." Something in his tone cut through her fear. Ruby nodded, hands shaking, and ducked into the basement. Cora lay curled on the cot, staring at nothing. "Sweetheart," Ruby whispered, kneeling. "Come with me." Cora blinked. "Where?" "Just come." She didn't argue. She slipped her small hand into Ruby's, trusting in that quiet, heartbreaking way children do when they've already learned arguing doesn't change much. They emerged into sunlight, and a crowd. Half the town had gathered, drawn by the spectacle of Wade Brennan standing in the street like a man who had made a decision and meant to see it through. Mrs. Brenner hovered near the church door, lips pressed thin. The sheriff's wife whispered behind a gloved hand. Even the Reverend lingered, uncertain where he was supposed to stand. Wade knelt in front of Cora. Ruby saw her daughter's eyes widen, not with fear, but recognition. He had always knelt to her level. Always treated her like someone who mattered. "Cora," Wade said gently, "I need to ask you something important." "Okay. Would it be all right with you if I asked your mama to marry me?" The street went silent. Ruby couldn't breathe. For a heartbeat, Cora just stared. Then her whole face transformed, like sunrise breaking through clouds. "Really?" she whispered. "Really?" Cora gasped. "Yes, you should." She spun around, grabbing Ruby's skirt. "Mama, he wants to marry you." A sound escaped Ruby that might have been a sob. Wade stood and turned to her. He didn't lower his voice. He didn't shield the moment. He faced the town. "I know this isn't proper," he said. "I know how it looks. Like I'm doing this because of talk, or pity, or some foolish need to rescue someone." Ruby's chest burned. "But that's not why." He took a step closer. "My house was empty before you came," he said. "Not just quiet, empty. Like something essential was missing and I'd stopped noticing because I told myself that was easier than wanting it back." His gaze never left Ruby's. "Then you and Cora walked in, and suddenly there was life in those walls. Laughter. Real food. Questions shouted down hallways. You humming while you worked, like you didn't even realize you were doing it." Tears slid down Ruby's face unchecked. "You weren't filling space," Wade said. "You were giving it meaning." "Wade, I married once," he went on. "She left. Then my mother died. And I decided alone was safer. Built walls so high nothing could get through." He reached for Ruby's hand, steady and sure. "But you didn't push. You didn't demand. You just showed up. And somehow, without trying, you climbed right over every wall I built." His thumb brushed her knuckles. "And now I can't imagine going back." The crowd waited. Ruby looked at Cora, beaming like the world had finally righted itself. Looked at Wade, this man who had tasted her pie and called it home. looked at the women who had spent a year reminding her she didn't belong. Yes, Ruby whispered. Wade frowned slightly. What? Yes, she said louder. I'll marry you. Cora shrieked. Wade pulled Ruby into his arms, solid and warm and real, and the sound that rose from the crowd was a mixture of shock, approval, and one very clear, very lonely disapproval from Mrs. Brenner that no one paid attention to anymore. They married the following Sunday in the ranch's main house. Ruby didn't want the church. She wanted the place that had already held them when no one else would. The Reverend came to them. The ranch hands crowded into the room, hats in hand. Cora stood between them holding both their hands like she was afraid they might float away. Do you, Wade Brennan? I do. The Reverend sighed. You're supposed to wait. I've waited enough, Wade said. Ruby laughed through her tears. When it was done, they ate cake, Ruby's recipe, and Cora declared it the best day of her entire life. The next Christmas, Ruby cooked for 20 ranch hands and half the town's outcasts. The people who didn't quite fit. The ones who knew hunger and loneliness by name. The house overflowed. Wade found Ruby in the kitchen, cutting pie. He took a piece, tasted it, closed his eyes. When he opened them, she was watching him with that soft smile he'd learned meant home. It tastes like home, he said quietly. Cora passed by with plates and grinned. He always says that, Mama. I know, Ruby said, touching Wade's face. And I finally believe him. Outside, snow fell soft and steady. Inside, the house was warm and alive. Ruby had thought home was something you lost, or something meant for other people. Wade taught her it was something you built. One pie, one moment, one choice at a time. And this time, it stayed.